double pneumonia, kidney complications, and mechanical ventilation. What happens next if Pope Francis can no longer continue leading the Catholic Church? The world is watching as the aging pontiff faces the most serious health challenges of his decade-long papacy, and questions swirl not just about his condition but about the future of the Vatican itself. Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, Argentina, became the first Latin American and Jesuit pope in 2013. Since then, he's been known for his humility, reformist zeal, and efforts to bring the Catholic Church closer to marginalized communities. But his health has been a recurring concern over the years, especially with increasing age and mobility issues. Earlier this year, the Pope was hospitalized at Rome's Gemelli Hospital after struggling with bronchitis symptoms that later turned into double pneumonia. The situation became critical when doctors had to administer high-flow oxygen and eventually resorted to mechanical ventilation due to acute respiratory failure. While the Vatican officially stated that his condition was stable, internal sources described it as very delicate, especially when mild kidney dysfunction was also detected. The medical team responded with intensive therapy, including physical rehabilitation, respiratory exercises, and restricted public engagements. The Pope was eventually discharged after about 2 weeks but remained on supplemental oxygen while staying at the Domus Sancti Marthi. The guest house is called home instead of the traditional apostolic palace, as a symbol of his humble leadership style. Though he resumed some responsibilities, major events like his Holy Week appearances were scaled back or handled by Cardinal Pietro Parolin and other high-ranking clergy, which only fueled speculation about a possible resignation or looming papal transition. Now, the Catholic world, and especially American Catholics, are bracing for what comes next. Pope Francis has long hinted that popes retiring should become a normal option, inspired by his predecessor Pope Benedict XVI's historic 2013 resignation. Francis himself has said that he would consider stepping down if his physical or mental health prevented him from fulfilling his duties. While there's been no official announcement of such a move, his absence from key appearances and the quiet handling of day-to-day Vatican affairs by close advisors suggests contingency planning may already be underway. This possibility opens a floodgate of questions. If Pope Francis resigns or passes away, what kind of leader will succeed him? Will the Church lean toward conservatism, or will it continue the progressive direction set by Francis? In the United States, this matters more than most people realize. American Catholics represent one of the largest religious demographics in the country, and their influence stretches from local parishes to the highest levels of government. During Pope Francis' time, he challenged global capitalism, addressed climate change through his landmark encyclical Laudato Si', expanded pastoral care for divorced and remarried Catholics, and opened limited blessings for same-sex couples, moves that won praise from liberal Catholics and harsh criticism from traditionalists. His firm stance on social justice, immigrants, and environmental responsibility aligned him with progressive causes that resonated deeply with young Catholics in the US, many of whom had been drifting away from the Church. Yet, at the same time, conservative American Catholics often viewed him as a threat to Church orthodoxy, particularly regarding issues like abortion, gender roles, and liturgical practices. Bishops and Catholic media outlets in the US have at times clashed with the Vatican's tone under Francis, signaling a clear divide that may shape how the next pope is received. The selection of a new pope is never just a spiritual process, it is also deeply political. The College of Cardinals, composed of more than 130 electors under the age of 80, will ultimately determine who becomes the next pope, and Francis has already appointed a majority of those cardinals, many of whom are considered more moderate or open to change. This means there's a higher likelihood that the next pope may be someone who will continue his reformist legacy, perhaps with new energy and ideas for the next generation. Among the names floated are Cardinal Matteo Zuppi of Bologna, known for his peace initiatives and closeness to marginalized groups, Cardinal Peter Turkson from Ghana, a vocal advocate for social justice, and Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle from the Philippines, often called the Asian Francis for his gentle, people-centered theology. The idea of an African or Asian pope also reflects the demographic shift in Catholicism's global epicenter, from Europe to the global south, including fast-growing Catholic communities in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. But American Catholics, especially those tuned into church politics, are watching closely for signs of how a new leader might approach challenges like clergy sexual abuse scandals, parish closures, declining vocations, and the role of women in the church. In recent years, American dioceses have declared bankruptcy under the weight of abuse lawsuits, and the next pope's stance on accountability and transparency could determine whether healing truly begins. Meanwhile, there's a generational divide among Catholics in the US. Younger believers tend to care about social justice, climate change, and inclusion, while older generations emphasize doctrine, tradition, and moral clarity. The Pope who follows Francis will need to bridge that gap or risk further alienating a church already losing members to secularism, evangelicalism, or spiritual disaffection. Beyond religious matters, Pope Francis has been a key diplomatic figure on the world stage, mediating talks between Cuba and the United States during the Obama administration, addressing the United Nations, and advocating for the poor and disenfranchised. His absence or departure from leadership leaves a vacuum in global moral authority, especially at a time when authoritarianism, war, and climate change dominate headlines. He has been one of the few religious leaders to publicly support Ukraine against Russian aggression, while also calling for peace and negotiation. In the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America, his words have carried significant weight in promoting reconciliation and interfaith dialogue. For many US Catholics and non-Catholics alike, his voice has served as a steady moral compass, especially when political leadership has faltered. If he were to step down, the absence of that steady voice could have ripple effects beyond Rome, touching Washington, D.C., parish rectories across the country, and even American universities where Catholic identity plays a role in campus life. As Pope Francis continues his recovery, there is cautious optimism from Vatican doctors who note improvements in his condition, though they remain vigilant given his history of lung surgery, age, and recent complications. But even with gradual recovery, the question remains: how much longer can he sustain the physical demands of his position? He has already given up travel, scaled back audiences, and delegated more tasks to aides, which suggests that even if he stays in office, his public presence will be limited moving forward. For US Catholics, now is a time for reflection on what kind of church they want, what values they hope to see upheld, and what kind of leadership they believe can unify believers in a deeply fractured world. Whether you're a practicing Catholic, lapsed, curious observer, or someone drawn to global affairs, this moment in history is a turning point. The papacy has always been more than just a religious title. It is a symbol of spiritual, cultural, and moral leadership that touches every continent, especially a nation like the US with millions of Catholics who look to Rome for guidance. The next steps for Pope Francis, and for the church he shepherds, could define the future of Catholicism for generations. Will the church embrace continuity or conservative backlash? Will the next pope expand on synodality and global dialogue, or close the gates to protect tradition? One thing is clear: the days ahead are critical, and no matter what happens, the eyes of the world, especially in the United States, will remain fixed on the white-robed figure who has redefined papal leadership in the 21st century. If you found this video thought-provoking or feel deeply about where the church should head next, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who care about the future of faith, drop a comment with your thoughts on who the next pope should be and why, and hit the subscribe button for ongoing updates and deep dives into the issues shaping our world.